Welcome to Behind the HOA Walls, where the quietest neighborhoods hide the loudest truths. Have you ever wondered what really goes on behind those perfect lawns, polite smiles, and HOA rules that seem to control everything? This is where the masks come off. We don't just talk about neighborhood drama. We uncover stories of power, control, and the people brave enough to stand against it. Sparkle's conscience says, when you see injustice, you can't just look away. Something deep inside you wants to set things right, even in the smallest way. So if you hit subscribe right now and turn on the bell, you're not just watching a channel. You're joining a story that's bigger than all of us. Before we dive into today's story, click subscribe, because once you see what really happens behind the HOA walls, you'll never look at your neighborhood the same way again. You ever hear about those neighborhood horror stories? The ones that start out small, but somehow spiral into full-blown nightmares? This isn't just one of those tales. This is a true Reddit story, raw, unfiltered, and shockingly relatable. Today, I'm taking you inside the experience of one family's fight against the infamous HOA Karen, a woman whose obsession with rules went way too far, culminating in a demand that shattered childhood memories. Our story begins in a quiet suburban neighborhood, where kids' laughter echoes in the backyard and parents relax after long days. The Johnson family had recently built a treehouse for their 2 children, a simple wooden structure nestled between 2 tall oaks. Nothing fancy, just a safe place where the kids could imagine, play, and grow. At first, it was perfect. The kids spent hours climbing up, crafting secret plans, and making memories. But then the HOA stepped in. Karen, the unofficial HOA enforcer, was notorious in this community. She took it upon herself to maintain order, often reporting neighbors for the smallest perceived violations. One afternoon, she dropped by the Johnsons' house unannounced, clipboard in hand, her eyes scanning every inch of the yard. "You can't have that treehouse," she said flatly. "It violates the HOA regulations." Confused and stunned, the Johnsons asked for specifics. But Karen was vague, citing safety hazards and unauthorized structures. The irony? The HOA's own rules didn't explicitly ban treehouses. Imagine being a parent hearing this. You built that treehouse with love, spending weekends sanding the wood, painting the walls bright colors, and creating a magical escape for your kids. Now, some stranger is telling you it must be torn down. The emotional weight was crushing. The kids, oblivious at first, soon caught on. Their safe haven was under threat. Tears were shed, questions asked, and confusion grew. The Johnsons found themselves caught between a faceless bureaucracy and the innocent dreams of their children. Why did Karen care so much? What drove this obsession? The answer wasn't just rules. It was control, a need to exert power, to micromanage every detail of their lives. This wasn't about community safety. It was personal. The Johnsons documented every interaction, every letter, and every phone call. They turned to Reddit, the true hive of raw, unfiltered community experiences. And there, they found stories eerily similar to theirs. People sharing tales of HOA Karens who went too far, wielding their tiny bit of authority like a weapon. Weeks went by. The Johnsons tried to reason with the HOA board, but Karen was relentless. Notices arrived demanding removal of the treehouse within 14 days, or fines would begin. The community was split. Some sympathized with the Johnsons. Others feared crossing Karen. The pressure mounted. The kids stopped playing in the backyard. The joy drained from what once was a place of laughter and freedom. This is where the story hits its first real peak. The Johnsons face a choice: fight a bureaucratic nightmare or give in to the demand. They tried everything: appeals, petitions, even contacting a lawyer. But the HOA was steadfast, emboldened by Karen's relentless vigilance. And then came the ultimatum: no compromise. Tear down the treehouse or pay thousands in fines. This moment was gut-wrenching, but it was also a turning point. Because sometimes stories like this reveal the true character of a family. their resilience, their love, and their willingness to stand up for what matters. The Johnsons chose to comply, but not without a fight. They documented everything, shared their story on Reddit, and found a community of support. The kids cried the day the treehouse came down, but their parents promised this wasn't the end of their story. Karen had won the battle, but not the war. Here's the shocking truth. This wasn't just about a treehouse. It was about the creeping power, control, and the destruction of childhood innocence under guise of community standards. A lesson in vigilance, resilience, and the importance of standing up to unreasonable authority. So, if you're watching this and thinking about your own neighborhood, remember this story. Remember the Johnson family, their treehouse, and the Karen who tried to take it away. Because sometimes reality is stranger and more heartbreaking than fiction. Have you ever experienced that feeling when something as simple as decorating your home becomes a battlefield? Welcome back to our true Reddit saga, where the Johnson families fight against. The HOA Karen continues, this time over Halloween decorations that sparked a war no one expected. It was October, the season of pumpkins, cobwebs, and spooky fun. The Johnson kids, though still recovering from losing their beloved treehouse, were excited to bring some magic back to their home. They spent days crafting eerie silhouettes, hanging fake bats, and setting up glowing jack-o'-lanterns. Neighbors complimented the display. Children from nearby houses came by, eager to see the spooky spectacle. For a moment, it felt like the neighborhood was healing, the arrival of Karen. But Karen, ever vigilant, ever watchful, saw things differently. To her, those decorations were an eyesore, a violation of community aesthetic standards, and perhaps even a safety hazard. One chilly evening, as the sun set, Karen appeared at the Johnsons' doorstep, clipboard in hand once again. "This needs to come down," she declared. "It violates HOA rules about seasonal decorations." The family was stunned. What harm could these harmless decorations possibly cause? The kids were devastated. Their joy was stolen again, replaced by fear and frustration. The parents tried to reason with Karen, explaining the importance of Halloween for their kids, the temporary nature of the decorations. But Karen was unmoved. What drives this obsession with control? In Karen's mind, the neighborhood had to look perfect, uniform, no exceptions. Any deviation was a threat to her authority and sense of order. The Johnsons once again turned to Reddit, where dozens of others shared similar horror stories of HOA Karens cracking down on holiday decorations, blocking creativity and community spirit. Letters arrived, escalating from polite notices to stern warnings. Fines were threatened. The tension mounted as Halloween approached. The Johnsons faced a choice: remove the decorations or face penalties. The neighborhood was divided. Some sympathized. Others stayed silent out of fear. In the end, the Johnsons reluctantly complied. The decorations were taken down. The magic of Halloween dimmed. But the story didn't end there. The family posted their experience on Reddit, sparking a wave of support and solidarity. Other families shared their own battles with HOA Karens, and the discussion grew. A community pushed back against unreasonable rules. The Johnson kids learned a tough lesson about rules, fairness, and standing up for what they love. Here's the shock. It wasn't just Halloween decorations. It was about control over joy, over self-expression, over the very fabric of community life. So next time you see a Halloween display, remember the Johnson story. Sometimes, even the simplest acts of joy can become acts of resistance. Ever wonder what happens when the community finally fights back? When one person's obsession with control goes too far, and the truth finally turns on them. This is that moment, the final chapter of the Johnson family story. And this time, it's not the Johnsons who are being watched. It's Karen. After the Halloween fiasco, something shifted. The neighbors, once silent, started whispering. One by one, stories surfaced. Fines that didn't make sense. Rules that seemed to change depending on who you were. And at the center of it all, Karen. The Johnsons weren't alone anymore. Their Reddit post had gone viral. Hundreds of comments, screenshots shared, People asking questions the HOA didn't want to answer. And that's when things got interesting. Karen tried to double down. More patrols, more warnings, more intimidation. But now, people were recording. One neighbor caught her trespassing. Another filmed her yelling at a teenager for having a basketball hoop. And when those clips hit Reddit, Karen's carefully constructed authority began to collapse in real time. Her name, once whispered in fear, became a meme. The clipboard queen. The HOA watchdog who went too far. The same power she used to control the community was now being used to expose her. Then came the HOA's annual meeting, the one no one ever attended. Except this year, the room was packed. People standing in the back, phones in hand, ready to record. The Johnsons sat quietly near the front, and when the floor opened for questions, Mr. Johnson stood up. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He simply read from the HOA's own rules. Then he played the video. Karen, stepping into their backyard, without permission, clipboard in hand, muttering about non-compliance. The room fell silent, and then it erupted. What no one expected was the final revelation. One of the board members, fed up with Karen's behavior, had brought receipts. Emails showing Karen had fined people for violations that didn't even exist in the HOA rulebook. She had made them up. The shock was immediate. Gasps, murmurs, phones snapping pictures of the evidence. And for the first time, Karen didn't have a clipboard to hide behind. In the following weeks, the HOA voted to remove her from enforcement duties. A new committee was formed, one with actual transparency. The Johnsons received an apology letter. And as spring arrived, something incredible happened. The neighbors came together to rebuild the treehouse. This time, everyone helped, hammering, painting, smiling. It wasn't about wood and nails anymore. It was about reclaiming their community. Karen moved out a few months later. Some say she joined another HOA nearby. Others say she's still online, lurking in Reddit threads, defending proper neighborhood order. But for the Johnsons and the hundreds who followed their story, this was more than just a victory. It was proof that community isn't built by fear. It's built by people who refuse to be silent. So, the next time someone tells you, you can't have that treehouse, remember, sometimes standing up for small things is what changes everything. Speech balloon, what would you have done in the Johnsons' place? Share your story below. And don't forget to subscribe for more true Reddit stories like this one.